The Kunz family valued closeness. They were the typical example of us against the world. The family lived together in their shabby house but were so close that rumors started making rounds in the community that they indulged in inappropriate relations. The community considered them weird and generally left them alone. On the evening of July 4th, 1987, the closeness the Kunz family enjoyed was forever shattered as each member of the family, except Kenneth, was found dead with a single gunshot wound to the head. The only question on the lips of the community was, who could have done this? Why would anyone murder the Kunz family? Welcome back to Crime Mystic, where we cover solved, unsolved, and mysterious cases from across the globe. Today, we are looking at the twisted case of the Kunz family that left the Bern residents perplexed for years. But first, if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please hit the subscribe button and like this video. So without further ado, let's dive right into this mystery. Bern is a charming town situated in Marathon County, Wisconsin, United States. It is a part of the Wausau, Wisconsin Metropolitan Statistical Area and is home to a population of 591, as recorded in the 2010 census. Covering a total area of 34.1 square miles or 88.3 square kilometers, Bern boasts a predominantly land area, with only a minute portion being water. Bern is a close-knit community that offers its residents a peaceful and picturesque environment. With a strong emphasis on family life and a diverse age range, the town prides itself on its tranquil setting and welcoming atmosphere. A peaceful environment must be really important to the Kunz family because this is the town they called home. The Kunz family was made up of 70-years-old Helen Kunz and her two sons, 30-years-old Randy and Kenneth, plus her siblings, 81-years-old Irene, 76-years-old Clarence, and 72-years-old Marie. This family was famously known in their community for being incredibly close-knit, so some neighbors considered their bond excessively tight. Residing in a rundown gray house situated on a spacious 1-acre plot of land located 6 miles away from Bern town center, the Kunz household was described as cluttered and disorganized by those who had been inside. With no indoor plumbing, the family relied on a wood-burning stove, both for cooking and warmth. Apart from Kenneth, the family members lived together in the crowded home. Kenneth had chosen to reside in a nearby trailer, seeking some personal space. Despite the shabby appearance of the Kunz's residence, they had managed to accumulate some wealth. The Kunz were seen as peculiar by their neighbors. They always paid their bills in cash and maintained a preference for privacy. Often seen wearing hand-me-down clothes passed from one family member to another, they displayed an exceptionally close relationship. Kenneth and Randy frequently drove their mother, Helen, into town to run errands and manage the household expenses. According to reports, the Kunz family remained somewhat distant from their community. While some residents are friendly towards them, the majority found them eccentric and peculiar. The Kunz became almost like strangers in their own town, residing on the outskirts of social acceptance. However, the relative obscurity of the Kunz family was about to change on a fateful evening in July. On the fateful morning of July 5th, 1987, Kenneth Kunz, who had spent the previous night out drinking with friends, woke up in his trailer with a pounding headache. Regretting the extra beers he had consumed, Kenneth made his way to the main house, expecting to find his mother, uncle, and aunts. However, a horrifying scene awaited him. As Kenneth entered the house, he called out for his mother, but there was no response. His heart sank when he discovered his Aunt Marie lying lifeless on the floor, with a gunshot wound to the head. The shock intensified as Kenneth moved through the home, finding his brother Randy shot and left to die in a pool of blood. Overwhelmed by fear and disbelief, Kenneth continued his search for the rest of his family, discovering the lifeless bodies of his Aunt Irene and Uncle Clarence, both having suffered the same fate. It became apparent that this had been a surprise attack, leaving the family no time to react or escape. Filled with a sickening feeling, Kenneth hurriedly left the house, running to the nearest neighbor for help. Frantically explaining the situation, he managed to use their phone to call the authorities. Within minutes, squad cars arrived at the scene, and investigators began their official investigation. Understandably, Kenneth became the primary person of interest for the Marathon County Sheriff's Office, as he had been the one to discover his family's bodies and had not been harmed. During interviews, Kenneth expressed concern for his missing mother, Helen Kunz. While investigators were worried about Helen's whereabouts, they also couldn't ignore the possibility that she might have played a role in the tragedy. In the early stages of the investigation, a motive remained elusive, and investigators kept an open mind. They considered the possibility that Helen could be a victim or a suspect, with her absence raising questions about her involvement. As the search for answers continued, investigators grappled with the unknowns surrounding that July evening. The investigators meticulously searched through the cluttered Kunz's home, finding it filled with debris and lacking basic amenities like plumbing and a proper kitchen. The family lived in squalor, hoarding items and letting dirt accumulate. Despite their living conditions, it was surprising to discover over $20,000 stashed throughout the house. The investigators realized that the perpetrator who killed the Kunz family did not do it for the cash, ultimately ruling away stealing as a motive. Gail Weiler, the owner of a local hardware store, disclosed to investigators that Helen had purchased .22 caliber bullets, claiming they were for her son's bird hunting. However, the most intriguing clue revealed by Gail was Helen's complaint about the family watching explicit movies together on their video player, which aligned with the discovered library of obscene material in the Kunz's home. Following the tragic murders, certain reports surfaced that shed light on the dynamics within the Kunz family. It was suggested that Helen, the mother of the family, shared a bed with her adult son Randy. Similarly, Clarence, Marie, and Irene were rumored to have slept together in the living room. While such sleeping arrangements may not inherently raise eyebrows, additional rumors surrounding Kenny's parentage hinted at potential incestuous relationships within the Kunz family. In 1933, when Helen became pregnant at the age of 15, a neighbor named Frank Gums was convicted of raping her. However, persistent rumors over the years speculated that Clarence, Helen's brother, might have been the true father. These rumors stemmed from the belief that Helen and Clarence shared an unusually close relationship. Despite the rumors and peculiarities, the community still felt the pain of the tragic massacre. People rallied together, creating awareness campaigns and appealing for information about Helen's disappearance. However, the investigation hit a dead end until 9 months later when Helen's body was discovered in a marsh, also having suffered a gunshot wound to the head. Autopsy results were undisclosed, and the case became even more perplexing. Investigators also discovered that the family has a history of tragedy. Mary Kunz, Helen's grandmother, had been previously murdered by her own son, Wenzel Kunz, in Manitowoc, Wisconsin. Wenzel was found guilty but declared insane and sent to a mental institution. It appeared that darkness and tragedy followed the family. As the investigation continued, authorities came across an intriguing lead. Christopher Jacobs III, who had interacted with the Kunz family and purchased a car from them shortly before the murders. Investigators found evidence linking Christopher to the crime scene, including tire tracks matching those found near the Kunz's residence. Christopher was initially arrested but released, leading to months of limited progress in the case. Finally, in August, Christopher was rearrested and charged with 5 counts of murder. In 1989, Jacob stood trial for the murders, during which the prosecution presented compelling evidence. The jury was carefully selected from neighboring Brown County to ensure an unbiased trial. Weeks of presenting evidence, cross-examinations, and scrutinizing the investigation followed. The jury was shown a graphic video of the crime scene, displaying the bodies of the Kunz family and their wounds. Tire prints from Christopher's car and testimony about his interactions with the family were also presented. The remaining Kunz family and their supporters anxiously awaited the jury's verdict. In a shocking twist, after just a few hours of deliberation, the jury found Christopher Jacobs III not guilty on all charges. The courtroom erupted in cries and shouts. There were speculations that the rumors about the Kunz family may have influenced the jury's decision and ultimately resulted in Jacobs being acquitted. Nevertheless, Christopher was released from custody, finally free. However, his freedom would be short-lived. In 1993, a significant development occurred. Christopher Jacobs' ex-girlfriend Stacy Weiss came forward with new information. Weiss claimed that Jacobs had confessed to the Kunz family murders in 1991, revealing that he committed the act as a way to prove his manhood following a dispute with Randy Kunz over a car purchase. Jacobs' public defender countered Weiss's claims, alleging that she had ulterior motives and was seeking revenge against Jacobs. The defense portrayed Weiss as a disgruntled and jilted ex-girlfriend who had threatened Jacobs after their breakup the previous year. Nonetheless, the evidence pertaining to Weiss's allegations was presented during the trial. Stacy stated that Christopher arrived at the Kunz's home on the evening of July 5th and engaged in an argument with Randy Kunz before fatally shooting him. Christopher then systematically killed the rest of the family, tying up Helen and taking her to a swamp where he shot her and left her body. The Marathon County Sheriff's Office took Stacy's testimony seriously, and in an effort to pursue justice for the Kunz family, prosecutors decided to charge Christopher Jacobs with the kidnapping of Helen Kunz. This decision was made to circumvent the limitation of double jeopardy, which prevents an individual from being tried twice for the same offense. By charging Jacobs with a different crime related to the case, the prosecution aimed to address any potential legal obstacles. Jacobs, however, argued that the new charges violated his constitutional rights, specifically invoking the protection against double jeopardy. He and his attorney took the case to the United States Supreme Court, seeking a review of the constitutionality of the charges. However, the Supreme Court declined to hear the case, effectively upholding the lower court's ruling. As a result, Jacobs was tried on the kidnapping charges. The jury deliberated for a relatively short period of time, reaching a verdict after only 10 hours. Jacobs was found guilty of the crime and subsequently sentenced to 31 years in prison in 1998. Chris Jacobs, scheduled for release on parole from Columbia Correctional Institution on February 4, 2020, found himself unexpectedly confined to the Marathon County Jail due to a rule violation. Jacobs was scared of being released on parole in Wisconsin, fearing potential retaliation from law enforcement. In 2018, Jacobs had sought a sentence reduction through a petition to a judge, expressing his desire to leave Wisconsin upon his release. Unfortunately for Jacobs, the request was denied. As his parole date approached in 2020, Jacobs showed a strong reluctance to engage with his parole officer, expressing a preference to serve the remainder of his sentence instead. Despite maintaining his innocence to the media, claiming that the police had coerced his ex-girlfriend Stacy into lying about his alleged confession, Christopher deliberately chose to serve the remaining months of his sentence. In Bern, many residents do not believe that Christopher is responsible for the Kunz family murders. The prevailing theory suggests that someone within the family was the actual perpetrator. However, with almost all family members now deceased, it is unlikely that the truth will ever be fully uncovered. The case remains a mystery, leaving people to ponder whether Christopher Jacobs III is guilty or if the true culprit is still at large. Today's story leaves us with more questions than answers. Could Christopher's ex-girlfriend be lying to get back at him? Is Christopher really the culprit? Or does Kenneth have something to do with the murders? Let us know what you think in the comments section.